You always ask yourself, why him? Why couldn't it be anyone else at that water park?
I wish there was something we all could have done that day. Sometimes I wish I could take some of my sister's pain away. Everything that you thought, that you put forward, that you sacrificed, is gone in an instant for somebody that didn't care. Within 24 hours, it went around the world. It was on Australia news, South American news, German news, News in America. It was on CNN, CBS, ABC. It was on Good Morning America. It was on Inside Edition. It was all over the world. Everybody knew what had happened. It was unbelievable. The love for my son started the minute he was born. He was very happy with just playing, being outdoors. So he grew up with us, his grandparents, his sister. We kind of have a little piece of surfing here in Ventnor. All his free time was spent surfing growing up until, I'd say, well into his mid-20s. So he was a little bit of everything. He surfed, he swam, he hunted, he cooked. So he was just lovable. He was just, American kid. He was the type of kid that he touched everybody's life. Doesn't matter how old, how young, anybody he met, he was part of their life. So he was wonderful in every which way.
He had an amazing upbringing. I mean, his mother and his father were always wholesome people. They were hardworking individuals who not only put their family above everything else, but they came over here and built a life.
He was always willing to help people, especially older people. He always seemed to find a way to help somebody, and he'd be there in an instant. Always willing to help somebody out.
He always wanting to laugh and make other people laugh. Very warm. He would always make time for his family and friends. Like, no matter what, he always had the time.
Whenever I can remember when he was a child, just, the swimming and just the fascination with, the fish. And, we talked about going out and fishing so many times. We have plenty of pictures of him in my kitchen holding up a beautiful flounder, and they'd be out back scaling it.
I had this really, really big surfboard, and Fabrizio, for some reason, everything with the water came so natural to him, whether it was, like I said, fishing, whether it was being in the water, surfing, or boogie boarding. Like, he was just extremely good in the water. And there would be days where we'd be out there for like 4 or 5 hours, and keep falling, get back up, keep falling, get back up, board would flip. And nonstop, I swear to God, he would stay in one position with me for 5 hours, just implanting how to get up, how to ride a wave, how to pedal out past a wave, like all these little steps.
The respect that he gave to people. He was soft-spoken in certain ways. He did things at his own time. He marched his own beat. You couldn't push him around, but if he set his mind on doing something, there was nothing that would stop him.
Fab loved the water, everything about the water, whether it was fishing or surfing, and even when he got into with the DEP and started learning about the microorganisms that are in the water and, making sure our waters were safe and clean, it was the perfect opportunity for him to have his professional life intersect with his personal life.
How ironic that one of his later jobs besides working at Bass Pro was working with the DEP, and he was, flying around lakes in New Jersey looking for that very thing that he passed away from.
My frustration at the time was that because of his professional background in understanding and testing water, that the only person that probably could have diagnosed him appropriately and on time was the person that was in the coma.
The reason they went to Waco was one of his sons, Michael, who they've been friends for a long time. Michael lived with me for a few years. was getting married, and they all decided to go to surfing. Instead of going to Mexico or somewhere else and being crazy, they decided, let's just go surfing, because that's what they all did. They liked swimming, they liked the water, living by the beach. So they set it all up and they found this park and they went surfing. So during that time, my daughter was having a baby, and the baby came a month early, so everything was kind of scrambled. My intuition didn't want him to go. And I just remember thinking, like, I just don't want you going, because I had just had Vivian, and, I wanted him to stay close. From what I understand, this park had a lazy river. It had like slides and cable parks, and then it had a section where the park itself, where they went surfing, had like an automated, wave that did the wave, mimicked the wave in the ocean. So that way they could have that wave all the time. So one of the guys researched it and said, this is the place to go. And this is that way we can have, half a day of surfing, of just surfing, constant surfing, and not waiting in the ocean for the wave, for the right waves. This way they would have the right wave all the time. The water was very, very cloudy, that they had to hang on to their, apparently there's wax for your surfboards. They pretty much had to throw it to each other, because if it go into the water, they would lose it. So the water was already murky to begin with, and I found this when he came home, that they were not happy with it. When they got there, it wasn't what they expected, put it that way. But churning this water made it look like it was blue, it was clear, and all that. But I guess in retrospect, when they were sitting on their boards, they really, they said that when they put their hand in the water, once it got in more than 6 inches, they couldn't see their fingers or their feet or any of that. Which, if you're sitting in the pool, you should be able to see your feet. But they couldn't see any of that. So the water being very murky and dirty, and with the heat, apparently in Texas, it had been very hot. The night he came home, I said, so Fabs, how was it? And he said, all right. He was not impressed. We didn't get to go into details with him at the time because he came in late. His flight had been delayed, and he went right to bed because he had to go to work the next day. But when we finally talked, he talked about the barbecue pits and everything that he did, but he really didn't talk much about he was not impressed with the pool. And when he came back, the day he came back, we actually went out to lunch, and he gave us some highlights of the trip. That night it was, he was tired, so he wanted to go. So he left, and then we had seen him a few days later at it was called Crab Seekin, and along the water they had like a food truck festival. And he just kept complaining that his head hurt and that he had taken medicine, but it wasn't working, and he was just not himself. And I just thought, wow, that's so strange. And, we said our goodbyes, and that was the last time I saw him, with it, I guess you could say. Because then the following day, my mom called me and told me she was taken to the hospital. He had spent time with my mom, who had the flu that week, so we just thought he had caught something from my mom. And as the week progressed, he was just kind of just getting slower and slower, to the point that there was a festival, and that day he had a massive headache, came home, and then asked me for some pills because he had a headache. So I thought, well, let me call the doctor and see, maybe just get him in and get him checked out. So he came upstairs, he asked Fabrizio a couple of questions, and he couldn't answer the questions. So within not even a minute, they had him strapped out the door. And we took him to the hospital. After that, they did all kinds of testings. We had to wait our 24 to 48 hours for all the tests to come back. And everything kept coming up negative, negative, negative. So then they really got scared because they didn't know what they were dealing with. So then they started asking us questions. Where had he been? What had he done? And so we said he was at Texas. He was at a water park. He went, surfing. So then next thing you know, the CDC got involved. Other infectious disease doctors got involved. And all of a sudden they came to me and said, we have to do a craniotomy, I guess it is, where they had to take part of his skull. So they had to take that out. Then they said he was doing good because his brain started swelling. After that, he had a good night. The next day, they came back and said, nope, we have to take the other side. So they took the other side. It was a 4.5 hour surgery each time. After that, they still couldn't figure out. They kept saying meningitis. When we finally, when they did all the testing and everything, they inserted a spinal tube because they had one that was measuring all his spinal fluids and level. But because they took both sides of his skull out, there was nothing to maintain it. But I said to the nurse, please put it back in because I need to see his levels. When they put it back in, one amoeba came out. And from that, that's what they found. But by then, it was too late.
He had wires and tubes and needles stuck everywhere in his body, and I prayed a lot, but didn't work.
So, and this was late Thursday. Then he had no more brain activity. On Friday, my husband and I had to decide to take him off life support. And no mother should have to do that.
You know, there were a lot of us, and our family's like very close. So, you know, a lot of cousins and family friends, and everybody was at the hospital. And, you know, we lived at the hospital for like the week, basically. They gave us our own waiting room and everything, and we were just there all day long. They had no idea what it was until it was too late. That's what I remember. It happened very quickly. I don't remember how many days it lasted. I want to say less than 7 days, this whole thing from when he went to the hospital and when he passed away, but I just remember that it seemed like a dream. It wasn't real. Yeah.
The amoeba that my son contracted is called Naegleria Fowleri, which is found in dirty water. It can be found in a pool that has not been properly chlorinated. It can be found in a river with hot water. Stagnant water is there. It's churned up, people swimming in a lake or a river that happens to be there with a high temperature of heat, or a pool that has not been treated properly. And it's Naegleria Fowleri, and that's what he contracted, and that's what he passed away from. Right away, the infectious disease doctor contacted the CDC, and the CDC went and checked out their park. Fortunately or unfortunately for us, they were tipped off. So they tried cleaning up their act, and but they did find the amoeba, and they said that's where it came from. So they did find the amoeba in their park, and that they were negligent from there. The Waco town shut them down, the state shut them down, and the CDC shut them down. We decided to hire a lawyer. And the fact that we learned that there was negligence there, and the people in the park did not maintain their water quality as they should have. So at this point, we decided to go with an attorney to be able to help us and protect, what was ours. We had found out people through other people that had gone on the park swimming with him that they had been in Dubai and other parks, and the water was crystal clear compared to the water that was there. So at that point, we decided it was time to do something to help us and protect us, and to give a voice to my son, because what we went through and what happened to him should never happen to anyone else. So that's why we did what we did. It wasn't for the money, because I would rather have my son. And it was to bring awareness to the cause and to the case, so it doesn't happen to anyone else ever again. The fears that we had in selecting a lawyer was very tough, because this was uncharted territory for us. We didn't know what we were up against. We didn't know who you know, do we get somebody from here? Do we get somebody from Texas? Do we, do people know about this? You know, like how do we approach this? It was very hard. Thank God that, my son had friends who were attorneys that started doing a lot of research for us and put us in contact with people that would help us.
Steve was very, very helpful. We knew from the moment we met him that he was our guy. He just seemed like he was willing to fight for us, for sure.
Hi, my name's Steve Kherkher. I'm the lead attorney for Rita and Enzo Stabile, who tragically lost their wonderful son, Fabrizio. They were enticed by a surf park in Waco, Texas, of all places, to spend the day surfing in the middle of Texas. And they saw these wonderful videos that showed beautiful blue waters in Waco, Texas, a man-made created surf park. Eight young men came, and 7 of them survived.
I have to say, in the Kherkher Garcia group, in speaking with them, very sensitive to what we had gone through. Were very understanding, but at the same time, they were very, I'd say, forceful in opening up doors that had never been opened before. Because this case we knew wasn't going to be easy. We had a mountain ahead of us, and they were the right people for the job.
Unfortunately, this surf park was contaminated. That killed Fabrizio. And the owner and operator of this surf park was a rogue individual who chose profits over health before and after this litigation, and took no responsibility until we filed a lawsuit and did our discovery and hired experts and went to the courthouse numerous times until he finally admitted fault.
The way they handled the case was they kept us informed at all times of everything that was happening. They did have to go through a lot, and to get to where we were going, they had to open a lot of doors that were constantly being shut in our way. And they just had to keep on pushing through and getting our word out there, what we were doing, and being very forceful. Collecting everything that day, the evidence and everything that needed to be done in a short amount of time, in a fast amount of time, that really kind of cinched the deal for us.
I've never met Fabrizio for obvious reasons. He passed away because of this tragedy. But when I met the family, I knew he was different and special. And I know that's a cliche, but the real day that it hit me that Fabrizio was probably one of the greatest human beings ever to walk this earth was I tendered 7 of his friends for deposition over a 2-day period. And it was clear that the way his 7 friends spoke of him, putting aside his mother, the love his mother and father had for him, but just his friends, you could tell this was a great young man. And the only system in our country is money damages, because there is no eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. And we were able to maximize financially, under the circumstances, a settlement for this family. And the family is one of the greatest families I've ever met, and I mean that. And they could care less about the money.
If it wasn't Steve, it was Kevin. If it wasn't, somebody or other was always there for us, guiding us, helping us, talking to us. Yes, from start to finish, I'd say they were there to hold our hand all the way through.
And my concern is every Father's Day or Mother's Day, I hope Rita and Enzo, are doing a little bit better. I know they say time cures the fires of hell, but hopefully they're doing a little bit better. Because I know Fabrizio would want them to do better.
I would definitely recommend a Kherkher Garcia group because all of them were very sensitive to our needs. They were there 24/7 if I needed them.
The law firm did a great job. They had the resources that we didn't to help us.
They had the right people on their team. Anybody that was looking to hire a team, I would definitely say this is the team to go with. We had a family plan. We own a business. My kids grew up in the business. They had their own jobs. But eventually, when our business was paid off, they would work a couple of days, we would work a couple of days, and we had a family plan. This is what we were going to do.
Well, the loss for sure represented just, it's complete hardship now because the plan was, my parents would step back. Him and I would, step forward because he loved working at Bass Pro. He loved working for the DEP. That was his dream job. And with having the restaurant, he could have his cake and eat it too.
And you work for that for the last 30 years, your sacrifice. My husband and I had separate days that we worked, so make sure that the kids were always with somebody, with one of us or with my parents. That just got wiped out in an instant. I'm angry. I'm angry that was taken away from us. My daughter's angry because she lost her best friend, her only brother. My mother-in-law is in depression because she lost her only grandson. I lost my only son. No one should have to go through that for somebody that didn't do their job.
My brother's case has completely traumatized me as a person and even more as a mother because now more and more of these cases are popping up all over the place. And it's just something that should be made aware.
When you don't know where or you're not sure, the chlorine or the water doesn't seem quite right, to 100% wear nose plugs or don't go in at all.
If you're going in any type of water that's not maintained properly or you don't think it's clean, make sure you wear a nose plug because this Naegleria Fowleri amoeba, if you fall into the water, it literally goes up your nasal cavity and there's no protection there to protect it, and it just has a free-for-all.
He loved the ocean, he loved the sun, he loved the water. And I think that to celebrate that, one thing that I do is he has a bench on the boardwalk, so I always, a few times a week, go there and hang out. It feels like the place where he'd be hanging out right now, And I think that for the family, I think he would want everyone to remember the lesson of don't take things too seriously and remember to enjoy.
One last thing. No man will ever die as long as someone remembers him fondly, and Fab will live forever.